Welcome back for more of the letter. Of all the places nearest to the school, Kylie picks this one, and waiting for food to be served is as awkward as I've imagined it would be. Not the bad sort, though. The pleasant kind. Surprisingly, Luke's an okay bloke when he tries. As long as you're willing to look past the tactless remarks, or we're not exchanging quips. It's clear he's making an effort for this to be as fun as possible for the 6-year-old by being chattier, even going as far as to laugh when Kylie's story calls for it. It's interesting. It's an interesting thing to hear from that man. More than once, I catch his frequent cheesed-off expression easing whenever he looks at the girl.
And your friend? Did you make up with her?
Yep! She said she just saw something she didn't like. She didn't accept the jellies, though. She told me to give it to you instead. She knows you like the red ones, too.
Very well. Hand it to me later. I'll bring some of them home. And I think your Tia would love to have some.
What a terrible liar. He says he dislikes the idea of having children of his own, but it's easy to see some part of him generally wants them. What's stopping him? Once Kylie wanders to the nearby bookshelves, after having lost interest in the conversation, however, we both revert back to silence. On our own, we have little to talk about, aside from the few questions about the other here and there. At one point, it does veer on local politics and history. He's surprisingly versed with it, that he can hold a decent conversation without throwing a jab. Nothing too personal is ever mentioned so far, though it's too early for those, and besides, I don't like him enough to speak of every minute detail of my life. Better keep it strict between the silence and the casual repartee. I can't speak. This whole thing already looks and feels wrong on so many levels. I'm quite sure he feels the same. So when another bout of silence hits us and becomes too much, I've taken to finding something else to occupy myself. Toying with my mobile, turning it from hand to hand while we wait for our respective meals. But it'll be a complete lie if I say I'm not waiting for some intervention. Something to pull me away from this place. Someone. Ashton probably at Salem by this time, working on whatever business he has there. Maybe, if I can make up an excuse and leave now, I can still catch him.
Cut that out. It's distracting.
My hand still holding the gadget awkwardly between us, arrested mid-pass by his bored tone. He's been quiet for a long minute now, after complaining about how appalling the tea they're serving here is. Before that, he has whined about how uncomfortable his chair is and tasteless the decorations they have here. Previous to that, he has griped about how dull the place is compared to the one he frequented on the upper-class side of the city. Well, I'm sorry for being such a peasant, Your Majesty. Figures he'll lose patience soon, having already grumbled about almost everything his eyes can reach. It's just unfortunate he's turned to me now.
Why don't you just look somewhere else?
I can't. If I turn elsewhere, I might end up looking at the bobfuck right behind us.
Bobfoot? Do I even want to ask?
I don't want to hear it. If it's coming out of his mouth, it can only be either rude or offensive. Regardless, he continues.
Everything looks good. But have you seen the face? True horror.
What is wrong with you? You know, I frown about this in practice, but that mouth needs to be washed out with a particularly potent soap. Preferably by your own mum.
A shame she isn't here,
For whatever reason, that puts an end to that talk right away. He returns to watching his godchild, who has found a particularly interesting picture book and is now poring over it, while I turn back to my mobile. Still no messages. Would it kill him to at least send a message, check if I were home? Meanwhile, Luke's silence lasts all but 10 seconds.
What is it with the damn mobile? Are you on a curfew?
He's got an immature act down pat, I'll give him that. Seriously, how old is this guy? Has he somehow been deprived of affection during childhood?
And what is it to you? I don't think it's any of your business what I do with it.
It is my business, all right? 1, I'm the one paying here. 2, I'm being forced to eat dinner in a place this stuffed and noisy. Lastly, it's been 10 minutes, the food isn't here, and I'm hungry. What you're doing with the mobile is annoying and distracting, when the least you could do is keep things entertaining while I suffer.
That's your problem? Shouldn't you be more worried about how this entire affair looks to other people?
Oh, I didn't realize this was one. You move fast, Daisy. You could have informed me first, you know. Had I known, I would have taken you someplace nicer. Certainly the kind with better food and plenty of good wine.
Why did I ever think this was a good idea? Did it ever occur to you how inappropriate this might look to everyone?
Why should I care? It's only inappropriate if you make it out to be. Relax, I won't do anything to make your boyfriend angry. He doesn't even need to know we dined out. It'll be our dirty little secret.
He's not my boyfriend!
The words come out with more force than I've intended. By the time I realize my slip-up, his lips are already spread in a sneer. Heat slowly crawls up in my face.
Oh, so there is someone. You're so easy to read.
Briefly, his eyes search my face. I have no idea what he sees, nor do I care to know. But in the next second, he barks out a laugh, displaying his amusement, without reserve, to everyone within earshot. In that moment, I know I've flipped a switch in him somewhere, and I've lost my chance to deny his assumption. Do I even want to know? Isn't that the reason why I've been so focused on my mobile, waiting for another message from him? For a reason to dump this awkward meeting and go after him?
Look how mottled you are. Now the nickname makes more sense. Shy Miss Pink and her cute little crush. The color suits you, by the way. It matches the hair.
It's not a crush!
Classic denial. But in reality, you want him to be yours, and your every move is made to make him notice you. In fact, you don't want him to see you with another man in a non-professional capacity, because he might misinterpret it.
The same thing goes for you, doesn't it? Bloody, yours is even worse. What about your wife? Aren't you concerned she might misinterpret this?
Daisy, just because we tied the knot doesn't mean we have to be joined at the hip at every single opportunity.
Don't be ridiculous. Why else would you marry her if you don't want to be with her for the rest of your lives?
Because, Daisy, she also has other things she can do with her life and friends to spend time with. Granted, I don't like some of them, and I have a few of my own she utterly dislikes. But wifey doesn't have to know my every move. Nor do I hers. Do you know how boring that would be? To be with the same person for all hours of the day, losing sleep over the mere fact they're not with you? Or putting everything you have aside to please them, to have your whole world revolve around one person?
Aren't you just mistaking that for something else? Unlike you, there are other people here who don't share the same jaded outlook you have. Don't lump everyone together just because it didn't work out for you.
And you, my dear, are unexpectedly naive.
What's so naive about it? If you love each other, wouldn't you want to always see them, be with them, to have them focus solely on you? Maybe you haven't been loved enough.
Oh, it's that kind of thing for you, isn't it? The love is eternal, love is a strong emotion shite. A starry-eyed girl pining for her dashing Prince Charming? What's next? Romantic confessions of love? A grand wedding on the beach? Dozens of spawns running around in some picturesque home in the suburbs? How quaint. Are you also expecting it's going to be sunshine and rainbows after? A happily ever after? Please.
What? I never once said... And is all of that such a bad thing to hope for?
Woman, I've been married for 7 years, and I'm telling you, it's far from what you have in your pretty red head. Tell me, how long has this song and dance been going for you and your man? Maybe I am mistaken.
Averting my eyes from him is all I manage to do. What does his mere 7 years have compared to the 17 I've had with Ash? It's laughable if he thinks those two things are even comparable. Ash and I may never move past the boundaries of friendship like what I'm hoping for years, but what we have isn't something anyone can scoff at. I've always been by his side, endured everything with him. I know him better than anyone. No matter what this man, this complete stranger says, I know there will always be a place for me beside him. And yet...
Come on, Daisy, that shouldn't be too hard. 3, 5, 8, 10, 20...
His words easily seep into my heart like a sharp dagger, gradually picking apart everything I've ever had to be sure of. Despite myself, the doubts resurface, and my defense crumbles right in front of my eyes. It's no wonder he sees through me, and as expected, he ridicules it. Laughs. Restrained, low and rumbling, a sharp sound striking the air around us, amidst the murmurs of people and the soft notes of the music playing over our heads. His shoulders shake when his mirth becomes too much even for him, and he reaches up a hand and passes it over his face, as if to hold the glee close to him.
Bloody bullocks, this is just brilliant. Oh, Mother, why do I always keep running into these things? This day couldn't get any better. I think I'm gonna need a stiff drink after this.
He dissolves into another peal of laughter. But when it subsides, what he has for me are more words. Scathing, each of them. The urge to run from here has never been this strong.
Is everything you said how you plan to act, if that man of yours ever ends up with you? Cling to him? Put him on a bloody pedestal? Let him become the center of your universe? Although with how long this seems to be going on, I think you've already done so. Marriage will just be icing on the top. Like some sort of reward for you, isn't it? For being a good, patient, loyal little girl all this time, never looking at another man. He must have been having a grand time with someone pining over him this long. I'm a little envious, to be honest. Maybe also a little surprised he hasn't suffocated from all your attention yet.
Laugh all about it if you want. It's not like you'll ever understand.
Luke falls silent. The ridicule in him is gone in an instant, and his eyes meet mine, sharp and imposing. A challenge, but I hold it against him with the same intensity, because if there's something I won't let his opinion trample on this. It's this. What does he know? However, he's the first one who looks away, focusing his eyes back to where Kylie is, and for a moment I believe I've won. Until he draws in a breath and turns back to me. The words he drops next, though hushed, hang heavily in the distance between us.
You're right. I won't. But I do know not to mistake love for obsession, woman. They are not the same thing.
It rattles. Out of everything he said tonight, this is the one thing that twinges my heart. Maybe it's the manner he delivers it, the lack of concert in his posture, or an underlining insult in the tone he takes. The remark is not meant to cut, merely to express a simple truth. This time, it's him who holds gaze against mine. Another unspoken challenge, and I realize that if this happened minutes before, I'd already have an equally searing retort at the tip of my tongue. There's none. But anger is there, ringing at my sides, prodding at the uncertainties I've long kept. Isn't it enough? We have the long years we've been together. We have the memories, whenever he needs me, until other people came between us. I've always been the one there. That dedication and loyalty should mean something, shouldn't it? I've always been sure of it, and that one day he'll see it for what it is. In spite of that, in this minute under this man's scrutiny, my own heart wavers. You know what? I don't need to answer that. Let's see how our relationship actually looks. Oh, wow, we're actually getting a good relationship with Luke. That's a surprise. Ashen's normal. Of course. This Oss doesn't need to hear them, and neither is he entitled to them, just because he dishes out some profound-sounding life wisdom no one asked for. So I look away, hoping my own silence would be enough for an answer for him. And it is for a moment. Up until the warm, furious tears prickle behind my eyes, stinging, begging for release, along with every other frustration this dumb talk has built up in me. All because of this man. I hate him. I hate the fact that he has to be the one to see me in this sorry state. I'm already expecting another barb from him when his expression shifts. Except he panics. In the span of 3 seconds, his expression changes from indifferent to concerned to utter panic. It would probably have been funny if it weren't so irked by the sight of this like-it bastard.
Hey, are you crying? Are you going to cry? Stop that right now, woman, or I'll...
Will you shut up?
He clams up almost before I could finish. Whether this is due to the sudden force in my voice or how I look, I pretend not to think of it. He seems like a deer caught in the headlights, with the way he's making himself smaller in his seat. But I'm still pissed. I'm tired, and if I can't punch him, I can at least scream at him.
You're an annoying bag of dick, you know that? If I hear another word from you, I'm sewing that bloody mouth shut myself!
It does do the trick. Not to the effect I've hoped, but the moment I've snapped at him, the stinging at the back of my eyes melts away, and the strange calm overcomes me. A fragile thing when found in the middle of a busy coffee shop. Nevertheless, it's appreciated considering it doesn't last, immediately broken by the very person that put me in this state, with a few awkward pats on my shoulder. Done twice, thrice, and another, until my patience runs out again, and I'm pulling out my book from my bag, raising it threateningly over his head. It'll surely dent his skull if it's slammed down at this height. Part of me wants to see that, but I restrain myself. He has the good sense to recoil, though. Shortly, he shrinks back to his seat and waves his hand in front of him in a gesture of surrender.
Watch that book, woman! I already warned you about your little threats. You don't want to see my brand of angry!
Then keep your hands to yourself!
Alright, that's it. People these days, I swear you treat them nicely and this is where it gets me.
You're the last person I'd ever want to comfort me, even if we're the only two remaining people on Earth. Don't flatter yourself.
Okay, have it your way, Daisy.
And stop calling me Daisy! I have a name, you know!
He mutters something inaudible under his breath, although afterwards he doesn't say anything further. For the next minute, he simply contents himself with making a mess out of the paper napkins, folding them into clean shapes without any clear intent, before crumbling them in his hand when he loses interest and dumping them in a small pile in front of him. A waiter serves our food soon enough, and Kylie makes her way back to our table. But before I can take a single bite, he mutters something. The words spoken in the same tone he used since morning, all under his breath whenever the honest part of himself would show. Despite my rather confusing opinion of the man, I stop short of shoving the food in my mouth to look at him. His eyes are on his food as he speaks, busying himself with cutting a portion of meat on his plate. But what comes out of him only rings true against my ears, above the din of the coffee house.
For what it's worth, Rebecca, I didn't ever think that's all there is to you. Why else would I leave my own goddaughter in your care if you're just some lovesick woman?
He spears a piece of his food, pops it in his mouth, and that's it. One whole day with this man, and I still can't figure out what his deal is. But, for what it's worth, as well, I don't think he's an entirely bad guy. The rest of our meal slips by in silence afterwards. Aside from Kylie's occasional chatter, the whole diner goes by without another word exchanged between the two of us. Dinner. Somehow we've managed to make it through the whole thing without triggering another tension-riddled conversation. A good thing, perhaps. One, because Kylie's sitting in front of us, and two, I probably won't be able to hold a proper conversation with my mind heavy with thoughts. We depart from the coffee house just as the evening crowd starts to thin out. The same wordless silence fills our short walk back to the school, except for when Luke gestures at a nearby flower shop and enters without waiting for Kylie and I. He emerges minutes after carrying a bouquet of daffodils, with the same softened expression back on his face. Unlike the previous one, he tucks this one away almost as soon as he looks up at us, a moment he's not willing to share. At my confusion, he merely answers with a shrug and continues walking.
For someone important.
I accept it for what it is, if only because he doesn't owe me an explanation. It does leave more questions about him, each one as baffling as the previous ones. Those are the last words spoken this evening before we head on our ways. Up until I arrive home, I still can't understand him. Here, however, a whole different set of questions await me. And much like everything today, it comes with the littlest of things. A lone note greets me upon reaching my unit door. Its edges flutter lightly against the faint warm breeze passing through the small complex. My hand stops short of twisting the knob as I stare at it, though I don't make any moves to take it. Dropped by earlier? You weren't around. Any idea where Scaredy Cat is? I couldn't contact her. Inspector Abigail has a few questions. Ashton neat script lines its surface. The message he's left short and straight to the point, but not without the underlining hint of friendship. He's looking for Isabella, apparently. Something about LPD's investigation of her co-worker's death, but ends its formal tone by checking on me. Us. Any other day, the former part of his message would likely prod at the piercing envy I've been holding, while the latter would probably send my heart aflutter. Little things from him that I want to mean something more. Yet, this time, only guilt fills me, and my eyes briefly shifts toward Isabella's empty unit. Luke's words repeat, inside my head as I do.
For what it's worth, Rebecca, I didn't ever think that's all there is to you. Why else would I leave my own goddaughter in your care if you're just some lovesick woman?
Have I always been like this?
This selfish? In truth, I've intended to call Ash after that dinner. If I didn't catch him here, invite him to that party like I planned. There is time, and he's still probably awake at around this hour. But my hands won't move. And perhaps it is for the better. Until I've had time to think this through, it'll be best if I distance myself from those I've been clinging tightly to. Find a different perspective and see things for what they are. With a soft sigh, I reach for the note and crumple it under my hand. The knob twists open, and with much ease when I enter this time. Maybe after some introspection, it'll be easier. For tomorrow, I have that woman and the mansion to worry about. Well, that's where we're going to leave off, guys. Next time, we'll see what happens. Thank you guys for joining me for this shorter episode of The Letter. We're going to be powering through this game along with doing Amity Park Redux, Something Unlimited, and then back to the pony game and some other things. So thank you all very, very much for joining me. And if you want to support the channel, you can check out our shop or check out our OnlyFans, Patreon, or Subscribe Star. Thank you guys for joining us. Bye!